So I'm talking about D3, which is a JavaScript library for doing data visualization. So why is data visualization important? So if you can visualize your data in a compelling way, you can convince more people. So this is an example where Florence Nightingale has made this graph of causes of death in the army in the East. And grey is deaths caused by preventable diseases, black is other, and red is deaths fighting. So this is making a really strong case that actually to be successful what we need to do is invest in hospitals and in hygiene rather than sending more guns or whatever else you might think that you need to do to fight a war. This is another example showing cholera deaths in London, and you can see that sort of shown as bars, and the bigger bars are more deaths, and they're clustered around an area of Broad Street, which is where the water pump is. So this is convincing people that cholera is spread by water, and therefore you need to invest in better sewage. And this map was used to convince non-scientific people in London that a proper sewage system was what they needed. And this is another nice example. Somebody else who was looking at cholera in London, and they've mapped temperature and mortality. And they had this idea that cholera was caused by bad air, which was actually wrong, but they couldn't just look at the numbers and decide it was wrong. It was plotted and shown like this. So that's kind of neat. It's not just to get your point across, you can actually gain insights from the data that aren't obvious in a pile of numbers by showing them sensibly. Okay, so on to D3. So D3 is a visualization library which lets you load your data and turn it into graphics to go on the web. You can use it for things like maps and bar charts, but it's actually way more powerful than that. It's really a visualization library rather than a chart library. If you just want simple graphs, you're probably better off with a simpler framework. So the downside of this power is that it does have quite a steep learning curve, but there are loads of examples online. And there are so many examples, you can probably find something quite similar to what you're looking for and then just tweak it to add your data for a first project. So I know that in the Azure team they have used D3 to make a bunch of dashboards, and I think that's the approach that they took there. So there's kind of two ways, I think, to get started. You can either start with your data and think what structure might best show your data, how do you want to present this, and then you probably will be able to code that, whatever it is that you've imagined, but it's going to take a while to get up to speed. The other way, I think, is to start with something that somebody else has built and try and sort of squeeze your data into it. It might not be the exact solution that you want, but it's a good way to get started quickly, and there's a whole load of stuff already open source out there that you can take a look at. Okay, so what can you actually do? As you'd expect, you can import data from CSV or text. Stuff in red I'll talk about in a bit more detail after. Geography is drawing Earth's spheres, adding latitude, longitude, doing projections, shapes and areas for those. Geometry is more different kind of shape drawing stuff, and behaviours is controlling what happens when users zoom or move or kind of interact with what you've made. So selections, this is kind of the heart and the power of D3. So you can do select or you can do select all. And they do what you'd expect. They use CSS selectors to select either the first matching element in a document or all the elements in a document. But the power is you can join your data. So if you do select all and then join it to your data, that will create elements for each piece of your data, and you can use that data to resize or colour or do whatever to your elements. And once you've joined select all with some data, then you get enter and exit methods that allow you to dynamically update your display with changes in your data, which is pretty cool. So transitions, this is pretty much animations. Selections that apply over time rather than instantaneously, even delays and durations. Basically works like animations. One thing to be aware of is that you can only have one active transition on any object at a time, so as soon as another transition is put on, if you've got something bound to a user click, then whatever previous animation was going on will stop and the new one will take over, which is normally what you want, because if stuff's moving around and the user clicks on it, you want that to respond to the click, not do whatever it was doing before. That's something to be aware of. And layouts. There are a whole bunch of built-in layouts, the boring ones like histograms and pie charts, and some other more interesting ones, including force diagram, which you can kind of move around and it works as if there's gravity effectively acting on the stuff, which looks quite cool. And you can create your own layouts as well, which is not something I've done, but there are tutorials online for how to do that. Okay, and that's all I have to say. Are there any questions? Okay.